Hi, this is our third session of Parents Life. Let me review the first two. First session, we talked about parental joys. And this is important to remind yourself of the joy of parenting because it can be hard. And there's a lot of joys in parenting. I'm reminded of Jesus in John 16, noting a mother's joy after horrible labor pains, but then the joy of bringing a new child into this world. And it's important for us to remind ourselves of the joys of parenting because it is a source of energy for us and it's a source of gratitude too. Last week, we talked about rules in the home. Tough one. When are rules good? And which rules? And when is maybe it good to forget about a rule or not be so rule heavy in the home? And I gave you an example of the child spilling cereal. The rule is they have to clean it up, right? Or would you help them? Or would you do it yourself? And when? That took us into a biblical conversation on law and gospel. Law is rules, and there's a big, important place for them. And for them to be consistent and fair, to teach personal responsibility, and even to teach the fact that that's how God judges us apart from Christ, is through the law, which reveals our sin. It's all very important. But the gospel is more important. And so forgiving the child and maybe even helping them, getting on your knees and helping them clean up, isn't that like Jesus coming to earth and getting his hands dirty and spending his time and energy on us and even dying for us? There's a place for that, certainly in the home too. That's a great discussion then, which we just really started into, of when to do one or the other. We need wisdom. Today, I want to talk in our third session about time, about spending time with our children. Now, I heard this when I was a kid growing up. I remember hearing adults talking about this goal of spending quality time with your child, not quantity time. That's not the goal, not quantity, but quality. And I remember adults talking about this because this was, I guess, what the parental experts would say. And it sounded right. Isn't quality better than quantity? That reminds me of this topic of myths and fallacies. Yes, there's something that is a myth or fallacy about that one. There's a New Testament scholar named D.A. Carson. He was surprised, I think, if I understood him right, that out of all the books he's written, one of his best-selling books is about fallacies, myths, in interpreting the Bible. He's a New Testament scholar, so he, in this book, catalogs all these fallacies, these misinterpretations of the Bible. The name of the book is called Exegetical Fallacies. Exegetical means when you're trying to get the meaning out of the Bible, explain it, exegesis. Exegetical fallacies. And he lists famous, tempting fallacies. Maybe they're not all famous, but tempting fallacies for understanding the Bible. He lists some of his own that he found himself doing. Anyway, you can see maybe, and I think he can see now, why that ended up being a top-selling book. Because isn't it really helpful when somebody says, I thought this was true. It sounded true. And it's wrong. It's a fallacy. It's a myth. That's really helpful. You know, the book of Job is kind of like that, where you have Job's friends who you know are saying the wrong thing to Job, and yet they kind of sound right. The book of Job gives all these chapters to hearing something that is wrong in all its power and all of its persuasiveness with multiple people saying it. Anyway, I think this one, quantity versus quality time, is in that category of there's something about it that's a myth or a fallacy, even though it is kind of right. See, that's why it's so tempting, and that's why it's such a powerful myth or fallacy. And here's what it is. What's a fallacy about it is that you can choose to jump to quality time with your children and kind of skip that quantity time stuff. Usually doesn't work that way. Usually to get to quality time where you have that conversation with your child that you were really hoping for, a breakthrough moment where they actually ask you for help or advice, or they open up to what they're going through at school. Quality time. To get there, usually you have to go through quantity time. You usually have to spend a lot of time with someone, don't you? Before they open up, before you really have a great moment with them that really hopefully helps them. That's the fallacy. We usually can't just surgically target with surgical precision a quality moment. So what I want to talk about here is how to cultivate quantity time with your children. Now, maybe it's a little bit easier when they're younger. Actually, it is. As they get older, it becomes harder. How do you create in your schedule, in their schedule, a lot of time with them? And first of all, you have to be willing to do this. And I'm hopefully encouraging you, because if you want to get to that quality time with your child, and I'm giving you example of quality time as key conversational moments. There's more than that. But let's take that example. How do you get there? Try to cultivate intentionally in your schedule quantity time with your children. All right, that's a challenge for all of us, myself included. But here's 4 ways, and I want you to discuss these in small groups here, breakout groups here in a few minutes. All right, 4 quantity time opportunities. First 2 are right out of the Bible. Number 1, mealtime. Mealtime is such a big deal because we all have to eat regularly each day. And I'm hungry right now I think about it, recording this. We need food lest we die. And it's so important for fellowship too, that it's a sacrament, the Lord's Supper, a meal with Jesus and with each other. It's a time to talk because you're eating anyway, so why not eat together? When I grew up, our family, the Moser family, was not so good at this. And maybe you can relate to this. We were busy, especially as we got older. And my brother and I were highly involved in sports. And then we had grocery store jobs after school many days when we got into high school. My mom didn't like to cook too. That was part of this. But we all seemed to be doing our own thing. And I think we missed out on something as much as I had a pretty great home life. And I really didn't realize that in my own parenting until 2015. And in the year 2015, I became a pastor. And now I was off the road every other week on the road teaching computer classes. I was for many years. I was off the road, and now we have in our schedule for the first time a regular 6 o'clock dinner. And I think it's been great, fantastic, especially for older kids that might be passing. We might be passing each other like ships in the night, and yet we all try to be there for 6 o'clock dinner. And I just think it's great. I really do. So that quantity time, again, laying a foundation of seeing each other regularly, quantity time together by doing this daily. And hopefully that leads to quality time. Second example of quantity time is also from the Bible, Sundays. Sundays, which we could call the Christian Sabbath. It's the day that our Lord was raised from the dead, the first day of the week, Sunday. And so this is an important day to try to cultivate worship and rest and time together, if you can. And please hear me, if you can. I realize, especially I was on the road. Like I said, I could not be in a regular meal time, at least those times I was on the road. So I understand, but I really want you to think through, can we commit to this? Especially Sundays, because it is a day of worship and rest, and why not time together? Certainly at church, can you worship together? You might be worshiping together at the 10:45 service as a family. You can tell your kids, this is something that's important to us when they become of the right age and all that. However you see that, there's some discretion here, of course. But I think it should be a value to work towards worshiping together. And then after church, maybe a meal together and, maybe time together. How can you work that out? I think Sunday is a great day to capture that. And if you do it regularly, that becomes quantity time. Just like if you capture mealtime together regular, that becomes quantity time. Regular time basically becomes quantity time. Two more. And these aren't as much in the Bible, but boy, are they a function of modern culture that I think we can grab onto rightly. Number 3 is vacations. Now, we kind of have this in the Bible with feasts in Jerusalem, holy days. And it's kind of like this. So it's a little bit, but hey, you schedule a family vacation, and that's a great time together. Even all that time in the car, maybe you're at each other's throat, but I hope not. I hope we try to spend family time for part of our time in the car together. Can you do this? I gotta admit, this is a little hard for us in that, well, it's good and bad. We usually take trips to see extended family. That's great. That's great. Our family, we don't take as many trips and vacations for nuclear family, just the 6 of us. And that window's closing with our children becoming young adults, our 2 oldest ones. So I got mixed emotions about that, but seeing extended family is great. And we always have that concentrated family time in the car, in the van together. Anyway, that's another quantity time together, block of time, vacation together. And then fourth and finally, hobbies. This might be a family hobby for us, board games. A lot of times it's individual hobbies. And I think I mentioned to you, I'm kind of like how I have hobbies in common with each of my 4 kids kind of right now, or at least common interests. But that's great if you can cultivate that. Hey, what do you want to do with dad? What do you want to do with mom? And it might be them saying that, hey, can you join me with this hobby? Maybe it's fishing. And you kind of take it up, not because you're as interested in it, but it's a way to spend quantity time with your child. That's a great thing. So for small groups of about 4 to 6, 7 people, discuss these things. Be practical. Talk about maybe each of your children, if you're able to, and if you're not breaking confidence or anything like that. how you can spend quantity time with each of your children. If you haven't thought through this intentionally, now's the time, especially if you can talk with your spouse, if that's possible. How can we do this? Which of these should we do? Mealtime, Sundays, vacations, hobbies. How can we commit intentionally to quantity time? Because good things will happen, or at least there's a good chance of it. I know I don't want to make it sound all rosy. We can have tensions with one another when we have quantity time, I understand. But usually good things will happen when kids see that parents are really trying to spend quantity time with them. Go ahead and discuss this now. I'll pause the video in a few seconds. I'll restart just a few more words I want to end on. So I'll pause it now and enjoy your group discussion time on those 4 quantity times, specifically mealtime, Sundays, vacations, hobbies. Discuss those practically and tangibly with your kids and about your kids and your grandkids. Okay. I have a few words to end today's time together. Number one is, if I could combine this lesson with the first lesson about parental joy. I think I mentioned this. I'll say it again. One of the great things my mom said to me was, enjoy your children, Mark. Enjoy them. And I know she's partly saying that because time went fast for her, right? Time's going fast for me too, and it will for you. Enjoy them before they're gone out of the house, and on with their own families, maybe with their own limited time. Enjoy them while you can, with quantity time, which leads to quality time. So mixing parental joy with this concept of quantity time, which leads to quality time. Oh, by the way, I wish I had time to answer your questions. wish I was with you, because you might have pushback or like, what do you mean by that quantity, quality? I hope it was clear. And please write me email or give me a call if you want to talk through this. If you just have a little bit of a question or disagreement or whatever, I wouldn't be surprised if I find myself agreeing with you and I just wasn't clear on this topic, especially. I want to give you a heads up of what's coming up next week. What's coming up next week is a 3-day weekend. We're not going to have Parents Life. No Parents Life on Memorial Day weekend. Have a great Memorial Day weekend. We are having church and all that, but we're going to hold off on Parents Life. And that takes us to June. Remember, this is May and June we're doing this, and then we're going to take the summer off, July and August, and I hope for us to return in the fall. Remember, our goal here really is to create a culture here, a community where parents get to know each other and they share with each other, pray with each other, find out what each other's doing, ask questions of each other, share wisdom, share books. Some of this happens organically. Some of it is structured like this, Parents Life, or we're actually scheduled it. And I hope by scheduling this and that's quantity time, which leads to quality time, where you actually, build good friendships with fellow parents and you really help each other. I remember a community group that raised kids together at New Life, what we used to call a mini church before we call it community groups. And they met together for years on Friday evening, weekly, and they basically raised kids together. Mealtime, small group time, and their kids played for years, through high school even. I want us to capture that again. I don't know if it's going to be exactly the same way, but a community of shared parental experience, wisdom, trust, relationships, all that. Okay? Coming in June, our next lesson, 2 weeks from today, will be on goals, parental goals. What is the top of your list for your parental chief goal or second goal or third goal? Be thinking about that. And we'll talk about that in 2 weeks. And by the way, in June sometime, I want to talk about educational choices. I know we have conversations on that, and it's a little hard to have these conversations, I realize, because there's public, private, and home schooling options, and then maybe even boarding private school, a fourth one. And then there's hybrid options, and so any which way. And maybe it's hard to have these because everyone seems to be in their own camp, their own convictions. I mean, you know what the Mosers did? We've homeschooled, but with a co-op, which is a little bit private school-ish, once a week. But wherever you're at, I'm just dead set convinced that every parent needs to know kind of the pros and cons. There's nothing perfect. And I want to talk about that. I want to get different voices involved in this too. That's coming up later in June. And I want to do that here before the summer comes. Anyway, but next week, No Parents Life, 2 weeks from today, we'll talk about goals in parenting. And then sometime in June, we'll spend time on education. A big goal. A lot of people are talking about it. So let us talk about it too. Anyway, have a great Sunday. See you at worship, I guess. And have a great week. Lord's blessings to you.